Welcome to the Million Dollar Coach Business Podcast, a show for coaches who are ready to up-level their business and take their impact, leadership, and results to $1 million level and beyond. If you're ready to break through your limitations and start taking powerful action and become the seven-figure version of you that your business needs in order to grow, scale, and thrive, this show is for you. I'm your host, Amanda Karlstad, master coach, high-level business mentor and advisor, master intuitive, and business growth and scaling expert. Let's get down to business. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's show. Super happy to have you here. Today, I'm excited to talk to you all about something that I think is going to be really, really relevant for you. And this is really coming from a place where I was reflecting over the past few days on this topic specifically. And it really is coming from a place of having worked very closely with so many coaches in their journey of growing and scaling their businesses. And I have to say, it's something that I have found to be pretty universal across the board. And if I'm being honest, it's also something that at times I have found myself experiencing. And so I think it's really important to talk about what we're about to talk about and to make this distinction. And so I want to start out by saying there have been times in my career, in my journey, where I have realized that I have over-indexed on one side or the other. And what I've come to learn is that, and entrepreneurship has really taught me this, but what it's taught me is that in business, and especially when you are growing a business and designing a business and doing the work in the business to make a big impact, both spirituality and practicality both matter. And they're equally important, especially in entrepreneurship, especially when you are in the journey of growing and scaling a business. So what I want to talk to all of you about today is to talk about how important it is to be both in a spiritual journey and also to be very practical as you are in that journey. And as I mentioned before, I have found this to be something that has come up many, many times that I can say I have experienced to be pretty universal across the board with both coaches that we've worked with clients that I have worked closely with, as I mentioned in my own journey, and just really observations in general. And what I have found is that it's really common at times to be in a place where, let's be honest, you are on this spiritual journey as you're growing your business. And many coaches I have found have gotten into coaching because they started out in that spiritual journey. I know that I had that same experience. So for me, this has actually been one of the greatest gifts that I can say wholeheartedly that I've been able to experience in my own journey, is the journey of my own spirituality. It's the journey that I have been on, that I continue to be on, to continually personally develop myself, to continually become the highest and next version of myself, to really, I believe, become the version of me that at the end of the day, I truly am. I really, really, truly believe this is the privilege of a lifetime, to be able to do what I consider to be really great work in the world, and at the same time to have the privilege of being able to be very immersed in a very sacred journey, a very spiritual journey myself. It's really one of the greatest treasures of this process. And what I have also come to learn and to realize, both from personal experience and from coaching hundreds and hundreds of coaches very, very closely, is that the practicality in business, the practical, the tangibility of things like business strategy, of things like marketing, sales, in our world, things like running things like paid advertising, brand building, content creation, strategic plans, very specific business things are just as important. And as more of the intangible, and again, we could argue there is a very real tangibility of spirituality. I totally believe that. I'm not saying that there isn't. I do believe that both are actually very tangible. But the point that I want to be really clear, the distinction that I really want to make here is that both are equally important in the context of business. In fact, what I have found is that they're actually very complementary. And I believe that when you are approaching both spirituality and also practicality in your business, I believe that they work very synergistically together, which is an extremely beautiful thing. But here's where the challenge comes in. Here's where I see the quote unquote problem that can come in. The problem can come in when very often when we are quote unquote swaying too far on one side or the other. So as I mentioned, over indexing on one side or the other. And an example of this is one of the most common scenarios that I see in working with clients is when there is a belief that one should be farther ahead. And because of that belief, which if we really peel that belief back, is really rooted in negative, it's rooted, and again, depending on the scenario, it could be rooted in a form of lack of some sort. It could be coming from a place of self-doubt. It could be a whole plethora of things, a number of different things. And what also happened is because as a coach by nature, you also have a very high awareness level, many times to your own patterning, to your beliefs, to the universal truth that you know that you do create your reality. What happens a lot of times, because you are so aware, in fact, is that you then go down a path, and I see this happen all the time, where you go all in, for example, on the spiritual side of things, where all of your focus suddenly is put on the spirituality side, on the quest. You find yourself in this quest of finding the answer that is going to get you ahead, the answer that is going to create that next breakthrough. And while I have witnessed and created and experienced myself the power of a breakthrough, in fact, they happen daily in my world, the power of a real transformational shift that can occur when you are on a spiritual path. At the same time, what is also true and what is also just as important is the actual practicality of what you're talking about or of what you're searching for. So I want to give you a really specific example of this. One of the biggest struggles that I see that I know many of you can relate to is having a consistent and steady marketing and sales system in your business that not only creates and taps into the demand that might already be there in the audience that you have or in your niche, but also a very systematized sales process that then takes somebody who perhaps opted into maybe a free event that you've done, or maybe you are offering some type of freebie, you have some sort of free download of some sort, or maybe you're even doing paid events, whatever that looks like for you in your business. But one of the biggest challenges that I see across the board is having a very dialed in and consistent strategy that is actually implemented and actively in play in the business, that has actually been fully implemented, that has actually been given enough time and has generated enough data to even make necessary tweaks that are needing to be made. And because a lot of times what I see happen is that when you're in this process and when you're implementing, let's say, a new marketing or sales system in the business, a lot of times what happens is that there's a lot of details. There's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of hiccups a lot of times that can come up. And a number of things can happen at that point. And what I will say here is that because the actual truth in most cases is that the system hasn't actually been fully implemented in the business or hasn't been implemented in a way that's sufficient enough to get the results that you want, or maybe it hasn't even had enough time to even generate enough data to really tell the truth. What ends up happening, and I see this happen very, very consistently, is that so often the coach then will then revert back and start to over index on the spiritual side of things in an attempt to find the answer. But the actual truth is that the only answer that is the right answer, that is the truth, is the result that is created in the business. Because the actual strategy, the actual practicality of what it is that you might be trying to achieve either hasn't been fully implemented, it hasn't been maybe implemented consistently enough, or it hasn't been given ample time to even work. And essentially, the actual implementation of whatever that is was probably, if I'm just being honest, not that good. And the solution, more often than not, in this scenario is that number one, it might just need more time, where more data might need to be collected, or number two, things might need to be shifted or tweaked or changed, or it might be a combination of both. And while, yes, the energy, the consciousness that is being brought to this thing, whatever that is absolutely important, and it will have an impact on the result of the thing. There's also a very real side to the business, a very tangible side to the business that even the most conscious, the most aware, the most awakened, where the practicality, where the tangible also matters. One of the conversations I was having lately was with someone who I would regard as having probably one of the highest levels of consciousness that I have ever encountered and has had tremendous business success at a level that is really considered to be unicorn status. In fact, his company is considered to be a total unicorn. And he's literally built and grown with his business partner a billion-dollar company and is a complete market leader in their niche. And one of the things that I found to be so fascinating is how much this person in particular, this CEO, actually emphasizes and focuses on strategy and focuses on goal setting, on focusing on the very tangible pieces of the business, the marketing, the sales, the systems, all of the things that are important to the business. And he was talking about the importance of this, the importance of not only continuing to grow one's awareness, but to also continue to become clearer and clearer in terms of your strategy and the way, the very tangible way in which one needs to go about building and growing a business and how things are actually going to be monetized, what the goals actually are, how you're actually strategically planning to achieve a goal. So the specificity of these things and how it's actually very important to the spiritual side of things. And the more specific that you can be, the more clear you are, the more of a channel you can actually be for that which you most want. So, my friends, I am bringing this to you today because so many of you have amazing gifts and talents and work to share with the world. You have callings that are amazing and beautiful and wonderful. And personally, I believe that coaching is some of the most important work that can be done. And I also know that most coaches, no matter where you're at in your journey, are feeling lost to a degree, are feeling like they should be farther ahead or have a desire to go to the next level. And at the same time, are very unclear about how to do that. And so what I hope you glean from today's episode is that this is a journey. Entrepreneurship, I believe, is both a spiritual journey and it's a journey of you building and growing your CEO muscle, where you will be called to become what I would call a great business athlete, where you will be required to learn and to do things that you've likely never done before, where true success is going to come in both you growing your inner capacity, you growing yourself, all of the deep identity and energetic work. And it's also going to require very real, tangible business strategy and clarity and practicality in the business. So I want to invite you, if today's conversation resonated with you, I want you to lean into this conversation and share this with someone that could benefit. And to take this work further, I invite you to apply to join us inside of our containers, where this is the work that we specialize in. This is the work that we do. This is where we focus both on the inner and also the very real and tangible business strategy. I believe this is why our clients are able to make such quantum leaps. This is why our clients very often come into our containers and create their best and highest months ever in their businesses and essentially set new standards in the business very early on, very often within those first 30, 60, 90 days. It's because of this. So if you're serious about going to the next level in 2025, if you are serious about your business growth and not just searching for answers and not just doing all of the work with no real tangibility to it, but actually doing the very real work of looking at where your capacity is currently limiting you and doing the work to grow through that, while also doing the very real work, the very tangible work of implementing a powerful business strategy for growth and scaling your business, then I invite you to reach out, to fill out an application, to set up a call. We'll talk about how we can help you create extraordinary growth this year. All right, my friends, have an amazing week. I'll talk to you all again soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the $1 Million Coach Business Podcast. If you're ready to step into the $1 million version of yourself and scale your business to 6, multi-6, or 7 figures and beyond, go to amandacarlstadcoaching.com.